is no Spaniard, but a German. Can't we have some breakfast while waiting for his reverence? Well, if you're Germans, maybe. The sergeant immediately went off to report this speech to the commandant. God be praised, said the reverend commandant. Since he is a German, I will hear what he has to say. Bring him to my arbor. They immediately led Candide to a beautiful pavilion, and an excellent breakfast was provided in vessels of gold, while the Paraguayans were eating coarse Indian corn out of the wooden dishes in the open air and exposed to the burning heat of the sun. And as this was happening, the Reverend Father Commandant retired to his cool arbor. Not so weird on his face. You'd expect the Reverend Father Commandant to do that, but that's not very Christian of him. He was a very handsome man. It describes how handsome he was and stuff. But his boldness was neither that of a Spaniard nor a Jesuit. Their confiscated weapons were returned to Candide and Cacambo, together with the 2 Andalusian horses. Candide first kissed the hem of the commandant's robe. Then they sat down at the table, giving back everything. You're German, here's your stuff back. No problems. It seems you're German, says the Jesuit to him in the language. In German. Yes, Reverend Father, answered Candide. As they pronounced these words, they looked at each other with great amazement, and with an emotion that neither could conceal. Which part of Germany are you from? Said the Jesuit. From the dirty province of Westphalia, answered Candide. I was born in the castle of Thunder ten Tronckh. Oh, heavens, is it possible? Answers the commandant. What a miracle, cried Candide. Can it be you? Said the commandant. As they both fell back a few steps, then running into each other's arms embraced and let fall a shower of tears. Who is it? Is it even you then, Reverend Father? You are the brother of the fair Miss Cunegonde. You that were slain by the Bulgarians? You, the Baron's son? You, a Jesuit in Paraguay? I must confess this is a strange world we live in, O Pangloss, Pangloss. What joy would this have given you if you had not been hanged? Pangloss, would that you were here to see this. The commandant dismissed the Negro slaves and the Paraguayans, who presented them with the liquor in crystal goblets. He returned thanks to God and St. Ignatius 1,000 times. He clasped Candide in his arms, and both their faces were bathed in tears. You will be more surprised, more affected, more beside yourself, said Candide, when I tell you that Miss Cunegonde, your sister, whose body was supposed to have been ripped open, is in perfect health. Where? In your neighborhood, with the governor of Buenos Aires, and I myself was going to fight against you. Every word they uttered during the long conversation added a new matter of astonishment. Their souls fluttered on their tongues, listened in their ears, and sparkled in their eyes. Like true Germans, they continued a long while at table, waiting for the Reverend Father, and the commandant spoke to his dear Candide as follows. Like true Germans, they continued long at table. May the legend long endure. The Germans are not intellectuals anymore. So, the next chapter, 15, how Candide killed the brother of his dear Cunegonde. Now remember, he was to be dead, or supposed to have been dead. So this is how it turns out he wasn't dead. Never while I live shall I lose the remembrance of that horrible day on which I saw my father and brother barbarously butchered before my eyes and my sister ravished. When the Bulgarians retired, we searched in vain for my dear sister. She was nowhere to be found, but the bodies of my mother and father and myself, with 2 maidservants and 3 little boys, all of whom had been murdered by the remorseless enemy, were thrown into a cart and buried in a chapel belonging to the Jesuits, within 2 leagues of our ancestral castle. A Jesuit sprinkled us with some holy water, which was horribly salty, and a few drops of it went into my eyes. The father perceived that my eyelids stirred a little, because he's still just barely alive. He put his hand upon my breast and felt my heart beat. I was rescued, and at the end of 3 weeks I had perfectly recovered. You know, my dear Candide, I was very handsome. So that's how he recovered. He was on the cart to be buried. and holy water that was really salty. I'm sure there's some irony there, sprinkled in his eyes. I became still more so, handsome that is. He says, I was very handsome. I became still more so, and the Reverend Father Croesus, superior of that house, took a great fancy to me. Now, that's Father Antoine Croust, rector at Calamar from 1753 to 63. He was hostile to Voltaire and the philosophies. Voltaire quarreled with him during his stay in that city in 1754. And he's been lucky enough to show up in Voltaire's book here. He gave me the habit of the order, and some years afterwards I was sent to Rome. Our general needed new recruitments of young German Jesuits. The sovereigns of Paraguay admit of as few Spanish Jesuits as possible. They prefer those of other nations, whom they believe to be more obedient to command. The Reverend Father General judged me fit to work in that vineyard. I set out with a Pole and a Tyrolese. Upon my arrival I was honored with a subdeaconship and lieutenancy. Now I'm colonel and priest. We shall give warm reception to the King of Spain's troops. I can assure you they will be excommunicated and beaten. It's a nice assurance. Providence has sent you hither to assist us. But is it true that my dear sister Candide is in the neighborhood with the governor of Buenos Aires? Candide swore that nothing could be more true, and the tears began to trickle down their cheeks again. The Baron knew no end of embracing Candide. He called him his brother, his deliverer. Perhaps, said he, my dear Candide, we shall be fortunate enough to enter the town sword in hand and recover my sister Cunegonde. Ah, that is all I desire, replied Candide, for I intended to marry her, and I hope I shall still be able to. Insolent fellow, replied the Baron, you have the impudence to marry my sister who bears 72 quarterings. Really, I think you're very presumptuous to dare so much as to mention such an audacious design to me. Candide, thunderstruck at the oddness of this speech, answered, Reverend Father, all the quarterings in the world are of no significance. I have rescued your sister from a Jew and an inquisitor, and she is under many obligations to me, and she wants to marry me. That might be the clincher right there, huh? My master Pangloss always told me that all people are by nature equal. A pause on that sentence. He goes on, therefore I will certainly marry your sister. But what about that sentence? My master Pangloss told me all people are by nature equal. My master Pangloss. Brilliant there. Therefore I will marry your sister. He says, we will see about that, villain. And he struck Candide across the face with the flat side of his sword. Candide in an instant drew his rapier and plunged it up to the hilt into the Jesuit's body, but in pulling it out, reeking hot, he burst into tears. Good God, cried he, I've killed my old master, my friend, my brother-in-law. I am the best man in the world. And yet I have already killed 3 men, and of these 3, 2 were priests. And he's the best man in the world? So he's not saying much about his times he lived in. Cacambo, who was standing sentry near the door of the arbor, instantly ran up. We can do nothing, said his master, but sell our lives as dearly as possible. They will undoubtedly look into the arbor. We must die sword in hand. Cacambo, who had seen many of these kind of adventures, was not discouraged. He stripped the Baron of his Jesuit's habit and put it on Candide, and gave the dead man's 3-cornered cap, and made him mount on horseback. All this was done in the wink of an eye. Gallop, master, cried Cacambo. Everybody will take you for a Jesuit going to give orders, and we will have passed the frontiers before they overtake us. He flew as they spoke these words, crying out loud in Spanish, make way for the Reverend Father Colonel. So, on to the next chapter. What happened to our 2 travelers with 2 girls, 2 monkeys, and savages called Ori Islands? From the Spanish orejones, meaning big ears, a term used because these natives adorned their ears with huge hanging earrings. Okay, you've probably seen pictures of those people in National Geographic and such.